Hello. So, if you're expecting a deep, in-depth, nuanced take on this book, you have come to the wrong place. So, there's probably a lot smarter YouTubers with way more subscribers and better quality. They don't have weird blue shit on their wall and have a better looking background than I do, that you could probably go and totally check out. But if you wish to stay and be subjected to my insane, not so nuanced takes, such as, like, Valmont should have known these bitches ain't shit, and just total incoherent rantings about a book that's like almost 300 years old, I honestly have no idea when it was published, then stay, because I feel a need to give my unwanted, possibly useless opinion on the book Dangerous Liaisons, because I was like, oh hey, this TV series looks interesting, and I started recording the first two, and then I thought, for Sandman, that I haven't seen just yet because I don't have Netflix, because it's on the list of I need to pay this shit off before I get that shit kind of thing. I got the first comic book from the library, and I'm not going to spend no 22 something on comic books because, like I said, I got to pay off this before I can get to that. So I got Dangerous Liaisons for free on Apple Books. Just went and it said get book, and it downloaded it. It's in the public domain. The thing's 300 years old. I'm ranting. And I just thought, I'll read it. It'll probably be a while, and I'll probably take a long time to read it. And then as I'm reading into it, I'm just like 50 pages into it. I'm like, is this bullshit? Is this shit gonna be all letters? And then I realize I can't fucking stop. That I am in it, involved now. I'm like, Valmont, I want you to just let go of Cecile, because she ain't shit. She's like a little kid. She's in love with Dan Sensi, I don't know, but we're just gonna call him Dan for the sake of this video. And I want you to just let her go and go after Madame Tourville. She's the one who your heart yearns for. And I think he honestly loved her in his own little sociopathic fuckboy kind of way. So anyway, let's get a little bit into what this book's about, in case you don't know. There's 4 or 5, 6 or 7 major players. The 3 most important are like Valmont, Madame Myrtle, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Cecile, Cecile's mother, and I think this one is supposed to be, the CH is supposed to be sort of a ha kind of thing, Havelier, Dan Sensi, and all that. Anyway, we open up in the beginning. Cecile has we open up in the beginning. Dan believes that Cecile no longer loves him because Valmont has told him that Cecile no longer loves him. And it's because, I believe, it is because Madame Tourville is wanting to be a good, puritanical, sweet woman, and then Valmont's over here just looking like every bad decision that she just wants to make, and she's like, no, I must away to a convent because you will take my virtue. And he'll be like, yeah, and you'll fucking like it too. Whatever. So he's all mad because she's not like in love with him and loving him back. And then the Dan guy, he's all mad because he thinks Cecile doesn't love him. And then there's this business about a key. Yes, Valmont has a key, and then he tricks Cecile into kissing him, the fucking scoundrel. And then she's all like broken up and fucked up over it, and her mother they're all writing to this Madame Material chick. And she's just like, oh, this is delightful. You're all so fucking basic. Anyway, she's writing to Valmont, and then she says to Valmont, I bet you can't have both of them. And then he's like, oh, bitch, watch me. But she's also writing to Dan something. She's also writing to Dan. We're just going to call him Dan for the rest of the video. And she's also writing to Madame Rosamond Valanges. I don't know. Cecile's mom. We're just going to call her that. And Cecile. And she's telling Cecile to speak less like a child. I always, like, if I didn't even pay attention to who was writing to who, I always knew when they were addressing Cecile because they kept calling her a child. And I haven't seen an episode of the new one, the whole new adaptation yet, but I'm guessing Denton is Dan and Camille is Cecile. It's too perfect. And I'm just wanting to see because Dan, my boy, played this whole thing of like being the innocent one, the sweet poetic one that, you know, because he's like the music teacher and whatever. I had to kind of look up some stuff because the one lady, Myrtle, was talking about a lawsuit. And it was kind of like, oh, and I'm being sued. Oh, but I am bored. Entertain me more. It's like, I wonder why you're being sued. Probably because you're a trifling bitch. Anyway, she is writing to all these people and she's intercepting their letters. Torville and Valmont, while he's trying to seduce Cecile and she's away because he kissed her and like fucked up her whole life. She wrote a letter about how she was utterly destroyed and just sobbed all over the letter and probably made the person she was writing a letter to just like roll their eyes. So there was a great like boring part in the middle because Valmont wants Torville, and then Cecile wants Dan. Dan wants Cecile, but they also kind of, both of them want the Myrtle lady. They want her. She's a bitch. I was out here like, man, you're my second favorite character because you're such a bitch. And so Valmont goes after, and there's a great, like, bunch of talk back and forth. And then finally, Marquis de Myrtle, or however you pronounce her name, says, you know, I don't honestly believe you can get either of these women because Cecile doesn't even say your name. She just says your title. And she says Dan's name, and she speaks more eloquently of him. I don't honestly believe you can get her or Torville, you weak bitch. And he's like, oh, I'll fucking show you. And the thing that was funny was I was about to get bored. And it was just one of those things that it was like, can somebody do something? Can the plot get moving? And then all of a sudden the person was like, yes, we need to get the plot moving. Don't you just love when books like do that? And they're like, hey, we need to get shit moving. Just, I don't know. Oh, so after that, it was like, you know, Torville's over there and she's not wanting to intercept, not wanting to get any letters from Valmont. She's not wanting that at all. And then she's like, but I must say how sad I am. And they're all betraying it to this evil woman. And it's just so cool. And there's, I must say how sad I am because I want him, but I know he will ruin me. And then he goes and he begs on his knees and he says, but you must understand my happiness is entirely dependent on you loving me. And then she writes back and she's like, what do I do? I cannot make him unhappy. And for the longest time, I'm just rooting for this couple. I'm out here and I'm like, I was rooting for you. We're all rooting for you. Valmont's forgot about Cecile, ain't even in his thoughts. And Dan has kind of forgotten about Cecile too. Cecile's writing to Myrtle or whatever and saying how she wants to take him to the countryside and spend a weekend with him and whatever. And he just seems so distracted. And then fucking Myrtle screws with Valmont's head and says, oh, look at you, you're in love. And fuck boy's gonna fuck boy. So he's like, I'm not in love. I don't feel love. Love is bullshit. I'll show you. Actually, I want to dump this bitch and go out with you. And she's like, that's funny. No, you're not. And so he sabotages his own happiness for this girl that I guess he used to be in love with. And I'm just like, stop. Don't. Listen, she's gonna die soon. Just enjoy the last few months of her life. She's probably dying of fucking French lady of falling in love in a romance book. Like, you know, like in the old days in the 1700s. I mean, I wouldn't make it. I'm 37, I'm overweight, I don't take care of myself. I would be dead. But I wouldn't have a bunch of money, so I'd be some peasant bitch. My throat is dry. Anyway, he goes, he commits an infidelity, sleeps with some bitch down the street, and tries to show that he is dedicated to this other girl, this Myrtle girl. And I'm just like, no, dude, what are you doing? Don't do that. That is a bad choice. All the while, she's got Dan on the hook. Dan isn't even, like, paying attention to Cecile. Cecile is, like, in another country or in another part of France. And then they all converge, and they're fighting over this bitch. And it's like, don't fight over this bitch. This bitch ain't shit. This bitch is a liar, and you're too dumb to understand it. And then it ends in a duel. Like, they get enough little fighty fight with swords and shit. Dan stabs Val right in the chest. And then Val's like, oh, fuck, this does not end how I wanted to. And so then it's kind of like that weird meme where it's like, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stab you. Don't tell Mom. And then there were some people that were like side characters, like Valmont's aunt, Cecile's mom and stuff, and I wasn't too interested in their drama back and forth. Those were the parts where it was boring. I could tell very differently. I mean, the author's dead, so I can't necessarily compliment him on how he differentiated between each character. But what I can do is say that if you can't differentiate between your characters, you should read this book so that you know how to make one character sound like this and another character sound like that. However, the aunt and the mother kind of just mixed all together. And I think the ending is actually pretty good because what happens is the aunt is like, okay, fine, Dan's dead. Dan killed my nephew. Fuck Dan. And then Dan gets an anonymous letter. Of course, we know who it's from. It's from that bitch Myrtle. It's from her. She is like, oh, hey, I have it on the strictest confidence that Valmont's aunt is going to, like, try for the death penalty. And it's 17th century France. I don't think he's going to get a fair trial. 1700s France. I was always weird about, is it the 17th century or is it the 18th century? Whatever. And so he writes a letter and says, okay, hang on. Before you decide to hang me in the square, put me in the stockade, or through the guillotine, hear me out. And he writes to, I can't remember her name. I think she was Madame Rosamond or something. He writes to her and says, hey, let me send you all these letters that we intercepted and expose all of my dirty dealings. Because you'll see Valmont isn't exactly innocent in this whole thing. And if you still wish to kill me, well, you're going to have to catch me first. And so they write back and forth. He writes to her, she writes to him. In the end, Myrtle is publicly shamed because it all comes out against her. She's exposed in her devious, dirty scandals. And she gets what she deserves. Cecile's mom and Valmont's aunt write back and forth about the situation. And they say she got smallpox. They say she went to a show and then everybody in the show was like, fuck you, bitch, deuces, we're out. And then they just left. The actors were like, we're not performing for you. You can fucking die. You done fucked up too many lives, bitch. This is an awful sweary video. I'm not usually this sweary on videos. I am in real life, but that's not the point. And then she gets smallpox. And instead of dying, she just gets ugly. And then she's scarred and she fucks off to Holland with whatever money she has left. And of course, in a predictable kind of outcome, because these people were not smart with their money, she takes the money she has left and she's basically penniless. So she's running off to Holland with her diamonds. Now, like I said, I was rooting for Valmont to stay with Torville. I was like, what are you doing? This is interesting. I'm liking this, but what are you doing, man? I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. And I think, honestly, like I said, in his own fuckboy, sociopathic kind of self-serving way, he loved her because he seemed to be very bitter towards Myrtle, because she kind of teased him and was like, oh, do you want me? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, I think you are in love. It's funny. And he's like, bitch, I'm not in love. I don't feel love. I'll show you. And then after he left her, she just went up and she turned into an even bigger bitch. And then it was, okay, it's war. And then she started the duel between them. And then the thing was, is like, I think Madame Torville was one of the more fleshed out characters, because she went out and she found God and there was a priest and everything, and the priest gave him his blessings, and she was like, I love him, I don't love him, I love him, I don't love him. Even in like the last few minutes of her like pre-death fugue where she was just going word salad, she was like, I love him, I don't love him, now I can die now that he is free. And I was like, she's gonna be like talking about how they're gonna be in heaven or something. And I actually, you know, the thing is, I normally don't like these type of books. I don't like powdered wig movies. I don't like powdered wig books. I don't like that because I don't know. I just know I don't like it. But that's my whole full nuanced take, is that Valmont should have known these bitches ain't shit. And Myrtle is just bored, and Dan is, as they said, just stupid. Because they kept saying throughout, like as they're gossiping with each other, is that, damn, Dan is so stupid. And Cecile is such a child. Oh my god, and she was such a whiny child. I was like, stop, go to sleep. Go away. And then she fucked off and became a nun in the end, because men ain't shit either. Fuck both those men, okay? So I really enjoyed it. It's free. I'm gonna watch the TV show. Might come back and compare what's different, because, you know, when shit's in the public domain, they can adapt it however they want. Like, they can make Cinderella a cyborg Cinderella. I really hope they don't do that. There have been too many fairy tale retellings over the time. It's just crazy. Anyway, I have a few books out on the Kindle. This is the first in a 3-part series. It is about a young girl who moves to Eden, Utah. She gets this coveted job at a factory, this beautiful yellow house. And then she finds these journals written by this guy, Claudius Brand, and she starts taking solace in his words because they have similar issues with their parents. And there's, her friends are like being really gaslighting. There's this one girl named Adrena that she doesn't want to be friends with, but her other friends make her be friends with her. And so she's caught in the middle, feeling like she's not really being listened to. And she doesn't know that Claudius kind of knows where she is and is enamored of her the way she's enamored of him. So it's this paranormal romance that normally I used to, like, every time I say I'm gonna shit talk something and I hate it so hard, I end up not hating it. And this is a pretty good book. It's called The Lord, the Devil, and Him. That's Claudius as he goes through the swirling void of Old Fox Trail, comes out on the other side a completely better human. This is my one that I'm doing good. I don't have copies of my other, well, I do, but I don't want to go get them. But this is Chenille. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know what it's about. But as a quick refresher, we have a young girl who's gotten out of prison and is moving into a halfway house. And she's just trying to get through and go serve her time and leave until somebody kills the person who's in charge of her halfway house. And now the sexy Roderick Gunter, yes, my very first erotic book that I ever wrote, I decided to name the character Roddy. Like I've said before, I might as well just call him Penis McPenis. But he comes in, and then she just decides, you know, why not? These are two books that I thought I would never read or write. So, if you enjoyed my insane, completely chaotic take on this, consider subscribing because I've got more insanity to come. And this isn't a review. It's 5 stars. I fucking loved it. I consumed this in like 2 weeks, and I am a slow reader. I was like, originally, this isn't going to be just all letters back and forth, isn't it? And then I was like, okay, we'll get to the next 10th. We'll get to page 10. Then we'll take a break. And then the next thing I know, I'm looking down and I'm like, how did I get on page 70 all of a sudden? So what I would do is consider finding a good copy, or like from your library or something, or buying a copy, because I got a copy off of Google for free and there was like a lot of weird problems with it. And I'd also consider doing a little bit more research than I did, because I was just out here going, all right, let's see this. I want to see people fighting and seducing lovers and stealing people. I want to see all this shizzle whiz. Because I am a depraved person and I like to watch characters destroy them.